Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Matt, and recently I upgraded to the DJI Mini 5 Pro from the DJI Mini 3 Pro drone that I've been using for the last few years and did a review on ages ago. I've been using this drone quite a lot over the years, and when the Mini 5 Pro came out with its 1-inch sensor, I got really excited. I thought this was the time to upgrade. The Mini 4 wasn't exactly the upgrade for me, and the Mini 5 just looked like it was the right amount of upgrades and features that made it worthwhile. So I've been shooting with this drone for the last week or so. The weather's been pretty terrible, to be honest. Unfortunately, I haven't got a whole range of footage just yet. But what I'm excited today is to take this footage into DaVinci Resolve and show you how I like to color grade my footage and get the best results. So without any further ado, let's jump into the grading suite and get to work. All right, so we're in Resolve, and I've got a very simple timeline here with literally 3 different clips that I'm gonna focus on just to address different points in each one of them. So, all shot on the DJI Mini 5 Pro. This is probably from the first time I ever flew it. As you can tell, it's like gray skies in Melbourne at the moment. It doesn't look exactly super great. And then we had a nice sunrise, thankfully, which is few and far between. And this was also taken from that same day with the 2x camera. Well, the 2x camera mode, I should say, on the DJI Mini 5 Pro. So, before we get into the color page, I want to quickly just show you what I've got in terms of my timeline settings. This is a 4K timeline, 25 frames per second. It doesn't matter what frames per second or what resolution, but obviously with the DJI Mini 5 Pro, we're shooting in 4K, which is great. And I'm going to go to my color section here, and we're in DaVinci YRGB. I'm not in DaVinci YRGB color managed. There's probably no point of really doing that in this particular case because there's no D-Log M transformation that DaVinci is going to recognize and then change the clips to already be ready for a display output. Meaning that we're just better off to stay in DaVinci YRGB because regardless which one we're in, we're going to have to still grade it ourselves. And the timeline color space is DaVinci Intermediate, which is just a wider color space we can use to make sure that we've got all the latitude possible to make all the adjustments. And then our output timeline space is just Rec 709 Gamma 2.4. This is a very standard output color space for digital displays and delivery to things like the web. All right, so those are our timeline settings. We're gonna jump over now to the color page, and I'm gonna show you first off how to best work with this footage and convert it from D-Log M. Now, I generally recommend you shoot D-Log M over the normal color profile so you have much more latitude in the image and much more flexibility to work with it later in post-production. If you shoot with the normal color profile, it's gonna be a lot more contrasty and saturated to begin with. But if you want to make any changes later, it's going to be really challenging to do. And generally speaking, you're working in a much more limited amount of sort of latitude. So if the highlights go, the highlights are gone, shadows are gone, you're not going to be able to recover them later on. So shooting D-Log M is a really great way to go. But the downside to D-Log M is we've got to convert it. It's an extra step in the process, and there are a few ways we can do it. I'm going to show you 2 of them now, and I'm going to show you my preferred way that yields the best results. So the first method is absolutely the easiest. You're going to head to DJI's website and you're going to download the Mini 5 Pro to Rec 709 LUT. You can install that in your LUTs folder in DaVinci Resolve. It's going to appear here on the left-hand side under LUTs, and basically all you can do is just drag it over to your first node, and boom, you've got a converted image. I'm going to show you here on the full viewer compared to what we had before. Let me just move these scopes out of the way. Compared to what we had before, it's more contrasty, it's more saturated. It's a great starting point for our image. You might not want to end up here, but this is a great place we can begin from. So you might be thinking to yourself, great, all I need is a LUT. And potentially that's true. Potentially there's also other LUTs out there that might yield the preferred results that you're looking for. But what I would say is if you want to have a little bit more flexibility when working on this image, I'm going to show you another method now, which is going to be a lot better for that. I'm going to go ahead and create a new color grading version by hitting Command Y. And then I'm going to go ahead and delete this node. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new node, which is Option S on the keyboard. And in this version, I'm going to work under color space transforms. CSTs, you can find it over here on your effects panel, drag it onto your node. And CSTs are great because they allow us to specify in Resolve what kind of footage we're working with, and then effectively convert that footage to something else. And the method that I like to use is converting this footage into a wider color space, doing all our adjustments, and then converting it back on the other side to something more limited, but I'll show you why that's going to yield much better results. So first thing I'm going to do is call this CST in. I'm going to go ahead to our input color space. Now we've got to be careful because D-Log M is not D-Log proper like we'd find on something like the Ronin 4D. A lot of drones that DJI sells, consumer drones, they're sort of less professional range, is going to shoot in D-Log M, which is not the same logarithmic profile as D-Log. So in input color space, I'm going to specify this as D-Gamut, DJI D-Gamuts. Just scroll down until you find it. For input gamma though, rather than D-Log, I'm going to specify it as Rec 709. Our output color space, I'm going to go to DaVinci Wide Gamut and DaVinci Intermediate. This looks like crap. So we're going to create a new node, Option S on the keyboard again, add another color space transform, call this CST out, and basically I'm going to specify the opposite now. Almost the opposite. Let's go DaVinci Wide Gamut for input color space, DaVinci Intermediate for our input gamma, and then for our output color space, we're going to specify it as Rec 709 Gamma 2.4. Same as our timeline, right? And straight away you can see between the two, we've definitely added some more saturation, but we really haven't added a lot of contrast. So you might be wondering to yourself, okay, we've just done a lot more work to get a lot less far. Why would we do this over working with a LUT? Well, let me show you. So first off, I'm going to add a node before our CST out. So I'm going to hit Shift S on the keyboard, and this is going to be our balance node. So we're going to do some exposure adjustments on this node. But what I'm going to do before I do any exposure adjustments, I'm going to change this to a linear gamma. And the reason I like doing this is it's going to allow us to basically just use the gain wheel on our primaries here and adjust the exposure in a much more natural way. So as I sort of move the gain wheel down, you can see the image is moving down with it. It's helping us to get a little bit more in the shadows. We're not really recovering any detail in the sky, but you can kind of see that the waveform is kind of expanding a little there. And maybe this isn't the best clip because obviously, as you can see, it's already overexposed in that sky and we're not really recovering any detail. But what I want to show you now is if I try to do the same adjustment with the previous version, what would happen if I did this under a LUT? Let me show you. Let's go Command B to go back to our previous adjustment. As you can see, it looks a little bit different. It's a little bit brighter. We haven't brought down the exposure. I'm going to hit Shift S on the keyboard again. I'm going to create a balance node here. I'm going to do the same thing where I go to a linear gamma. And again, you don't need to do this. It just allows you to do a one wheel kind of adjustment. Go back to my primaries here. And again, we're going to go under gain and I'm just going to bring my gain down. Now watch the waveform when I do this. Watch the scopes. That's interesting. I'm definitely moving the image down, but I'm moving the entire image down. It's not working in the same way as it works under CSTs. Now, what I could do is I can reset this entire node. I've also just reset the gamma as well. It's no longer on linear. And I could work with my lift, gamma, and gain. I could maybe go into my shadows here and just bring the shadows down. And I could go to my midtones and bring my midtones down. You know, I have a decision to make if I want to do anything with my highlights, but you can really tell that the image is acting in a very different way than it was under our CSTs. Effectively, what we're doing is we're just piping this image underneath a LUT, which is a very static adjustment as compared to working in CSTs, which are literally dynamic mathematical formulas where it's transforming the footage from one color space to another. You're working in that much wider color space and then you're piping it back out to, again, another mathematical formula rather than just having this static LUT, which is not going to give you as much flexibility. Again, if I go back to my image working under CSTs, obviously it's not as contrasty. That's okay. We can add some more contrast. I'll add a new node. I'll call this one con. I'm going to change the pivot down here to 0.336, which is in DaVinci Wide Gamut. That's our middle gray point. So effectively it means it sort of gives us the most neutral place to add contrast from rather than pivoting from any other point in the image. I'm going to use my panel here, but the contrast adjustment is just here. So I can add some more contrast. We can tell when we do that, we're immediately adding some more saturation as well to the image. So this is looking quite nice. Let me go ahead and add a new serial node here, and I'm going to call this one HDR. So again, label it HDR. We're going to go to HDR wheels, which are right next to our primary wheels. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate over a couple of zones until I get to my specular. And let's watch this, right? I'm going to use my panel again, but you can just use the exposure slider down the bottom. When I go down on the exposure, watch the top part there of the image. See how it's kind of just affecting that top zone? Now, it kind of looks like we're recovering detail. We're not. I want to be very clear. If I disable and re-enable this, this does not look good. We are not recovering any detail in the sky. The detail has been gone. Trust me, I'm not blind, but all I'm doing here is trying to illustrate a point. When you work under CSTs, you're able to make much finer adjustments to the image. You're able to work with the image in a very different way than working under a LUT, a singular LUT, which just, again, is expecting a certain type of footage, is gonna react the same way every single time, and not going to give you as much flexibility as working within the 2 CST nodes that we talked about. So that's the first thing I wanted to show you, is just the difference between working with a LUT, which if I go back to my previous version here, compared to our CSTs. We're actually still not as contrasty on the CSTs as we were on the LUT, but again, very easy to do, and I feel much more comfortable because we're in a much wider color space. All right, so now I'm going to show you this clip here. And what I'm going to do is I'm literally just going to apply the color grade, that CST grade we have here. I'm just going to clean it up. And then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to use the middle mouse click button to bring it across. So if I just click the middle mouse button, boom, export it over. Looks okay, but it doesn't look okay, right? Obviously. And what's happened really is just it's that HDR adjustment that I spoke about earlier. I've brought it down too far, right? And what it's doing is it's making that sun look terrible, because it looks like a ball of fire in the sky, but that's not how we see the sun. It just doesn't look great. So I'm going to disable this. Looks 100 times better to begin with. Now, this is a very highly contrasted shot because we are shooting directly into the sort of sunrise, and obviously we're sort of balanced at the moment to sort of get a little bit less of underneath it. But if I bypass it, there is that detail is there, absolutely. And this is one of the benefits to the Mini 5 Pro, and even the Mini 3 Pro had a good amount of dynamic range as well. I believe this wasn't shot with auto ISO, which again, I'll touch on very shortly. Obviously, if you have a Mini 5 Pro, you might know about to get the maximum amount of dynamic range, it's recommended you shoot in auto ISO. I can tell you why it's probably not a good idea in the next clip. But with this one, I mean, you know, again, because we've taken the previous adjustment, we've also got this balance, which is obviously biased towards bringing it lower down, bringing the exposure lower. Look, you know, if we look at this between the two, I prefer it to be darker. I prefer to have more detail there in the sky. But what we can do is we can make an adjustment in HDR just to pop the shadows out a little bit. So I'm going to jump out of the full viewer. I'm going to re-enable my HDR node, but reset it. And then I'm going to go back to HDR down here in the bottom, and I'm going to go to shadow, and I'm just going to bring up the shadow just slightly, probably about a stop, no more than. Even a stop looks like a lot, but you can see that looks really good to me. Like it's getting a bit more HDR-y, right? It's getting to that point where it's like, oh, we're a bit afraid of shadows. We want to make sure everything's kind of got exposure on it. I think this is a good balance. And the thing to watch out for here is when we do that, we're going to get more noise in the shadows. It's just one of the things about this drone in particular, but also probably all DJI drones. The DJI Mini 3 was exactly the same. You could be shooting at a low ISO value, but if you're shooting into darker areas, you're going to see more noise. And I'll show you that specifically here, because if I play this through, look at that, look at that. I hope it's coming through on YouTube. There's a lot of noise happening in this corner, especially a lot of sort of blocking and artifacting. What I want to do is I want to try and address that now. So I'm going to bring this back to full view. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to create a node before my CST. So I'm going to do the noise reduction before I do all my color grading. Shift S on the keyboard to create a serial node before. NR for noise reduction. I'm just going to label it. And then what I'm going to do is go over to my noise reduction, which is over here. I'm going to turn on temporal noise reduction, 3 frames. I would recommend changing it to better, but obviously it's going to put more stress on your processor. If that's happening, maybe reduce your timeline to 1080p while you're working and then change it back to 4K before you render. What you can also do as well is change it to faster for now and then remember to turn it back to better before you render. Let's just go for faster for the moment because I just want to showcase this. I'm going to zoom back into that area here and I'm just going to up the luma and chroma values. And straight away, I'm literally at about 15 or so on the temporal threshold. That's looking night and day better. And I'm just going to play it through. So much better. This is what I love about noise reduction in DaVinci Resolve. Sadly, it is a studio feature, so if you're not using DaVinci Resolve Studio, you're not going to have access to it. But this is definitely going to help you, especially, again, you could be shooting in lower ISO values on the DJI Mini 5 Pro, and you're still going to see some noise in those shadow areas. So especially once you start to boost those areas, becomes very obvious. The last thing I want to do to this particular shot, but also what I do to a lot of my shots, is add a vignette. Nice and easy. I'm going to create a new serial node here, and I'm going to call this one, I just call it Vig for vignette. And I'm going to go over to my window, power windows. I'm going to click the circle power window here, and I'm just going to use the panel, but you can easily just use your mouse to do this as well to adjust the sizing of this so it sort of fills the whole screen. I'm then going to use the softness controls, which you can also do with your mouse just by clicking and dragging on the endpoints here to feather out the vignette. The most important thing we need to do is make sure we invert it, which is this button here. And then I'm going to go over to my curves down the bottom here. I'm just going to drag it down. I'm going to bring this back to a full screen view. And as you can see, when I do that, I'm creating a nice vignette around the overall image. I find this just helps to focus the attention of where you're supposed to be looking in the image, especially in landscapes. You're kind of at the whim of the lighting of the environment, and using something like a power window, a simple vignette power window, is just going to help you to make sure, if I drag these scopes out of the way, you can see that it definitely helps just focus you in towards the sun. There is still some detail there, mainly in the center of the image. It's a bit darker, obviously, around the edges, which is what's supposed to be, but this looks a whole lot better, a whole lot more focused, and just, yeah, it looks really, really beautiful. I mean, it was a beautiful sunrise, thankfully, but that really helps too, just to focus the attention. So the last shot I have, I've literally just taken my adjustments that I've done in the previous ones, and I've brought them in here. This is what it looks like, full viewer. This is with the 2x Tele mode on the DJI Mini 5 Pro. And look, what I will say, and this is what I would suggest, on the DJI Mini 5 Pro, you have some noise reduction settings, which you can turn on. They are enabled by default, and it's set to 0. I'd recommend either -1 or -2 if you're a bit crazy like me. -2 starts to get really noisy, so maybe -1 might be a good little in between. And that's great. Again, you could bring something into Resolve, you can use noise reduction, it does add a little bit of processing power, and then you've got that 2x mode. The issue you'll find with the 2x Tele mode is it's going to increase noise. Effectively, you're sort of binning a whole bunch of pixels to get down a little bit in terms of to crop into that sensor, and the noise is going to become larger and more blocky. And I've noticed this a lot with the Mini 5 Pro. In the Tele mode, it's still great, but there's a lot more noise and artifacting, and especially if you use auto ISO mode. So I want to talk about this in a future video. Auto ISO mode is what DJI is saying is going to give you the maximum amount of dynamic range, because basically the drone can go in between different ISO values to make sure that you're basically maximized for the total amount of dynamic range in the image. The problem with that is auto ISO mode can be extremely aggressive. I would not have taken this shot at ISO 800, but that's where it ended up with the auto ISO mode. And as a result, I got so much more noise. So effectively what I've done here, I'm going to try and zoom in so you can see this on YouTube. It's really hard to see. There's a lot of dancing going around in the trees over here. I just sort of move it over. This is with noise reduction already applied. So I've already taken the noise reduction from the previous clip and I've applied it here. I'm seeing less detail, which is obviously because we're binning into a smaller part of the sensor. We're just not getting as much detail as we would with the wide lens. And if I jump back out, I could apply some more noise reduction. Anything I do here is just going to probably add to my processing. So let's go up to about 37. It's really hard to see without being in the full viewer, but I've upped the values here. I'm still seeing a little bit of it. I think it's really hard to get rid of it entirely. It's definitely keeping it together a bit better, but it's not as ideal as probably shooting in a lower ISO value. So you've just got to be careful when you are shooting in auto ISO mode on the Mini 5 Pro. It can get really aggressive. It can boost the exposure too much. And especially in that 2x Tele mode, you're already dealing with more noise. You're going to notice it quite a bit. What I might also want to do with this particular shot is maybe probably before my vignette is just go ahead and add some sharpness. So I'm just going to call this sharpness. I'm going to go over to my blur panel over here, which is this icon. And I'm going to go into my full viewer. Actually, I won't go into my full viewer so you can see it. And I'm going to bring this down to probably about 0.47, which is going to sharpen things up. So if we sort of look at this in the full viewer again, disable and re-enable, looks so much better. So definitely applying noise reduction first, then applying some more sharpening later is going to work out really well. As I said though, even with quite a bit of temporal noise reduction, I'm still seeing some dancing around in the pixels. It might not be as obvious on YouTube, but look, this is fine. This is nice. And again, if I had the Mini 3 Pro instead, I wouldn't have been able to get this shot without having to crop in digitally in post-production. So this is definitely a nice addition. It's great to have. It's definitely not a dedicated telephoto camera like you're gonna have on something like a DJI Air 3S. But as I said, still cleans up and you're still able to get a really nice grade. This is kind of where we started and this is where we ended up with the image. And I think it's really contrasty, poppy, colorful. As I said, it was a beautiful sunrise, thankfully, so that always helps. I would say, you know, beyond all the color grading stuff we're doing, just going to places that look nice to begin with and have really nice lighting is going to give you the absolute best leg up to get the best drone footage. But that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully it's given you some tips and advice on how to address grading for your drone clips. What I would say is I've shown you how to do this on a clip by clip basis. Usually the way I go about this when I'm grading my drone sequences is I'll do it as a group. So rather than doing it individually one by one, I'll grade under a group. But I haven't covered that here. Again, if you want to see that kind of stuff, let me know in the comments below. Happy to do some more videos on this. But otherwise, let me know your thoughts. Subscribe and like the video if you're enjoying the content. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.